she's like a new teacher, so she like misses her. So finally I'm like, hey, will you just please reach out and just kind of get this
Her and
started.
I played phone tag for 4 days.
Oh.
So I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, when I called the.
All right. Good evening. I would like to call the regular board meeting of the Waterloo Community Schools Board of Directors to order and ask that you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you, and will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was trying to figure out if you wanted to back up your chair. I was trying to help a little bit.
And now Sue Flynn will read our mission statement.
The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community.
Thank you, Sue. The first item on our agenda this evening is Exhibit A, and this is a new partnership recognition with Kingsley Elementary. And so I will invite Tara Thomas, our Director of School and Community Relations, forward, and she will introduce. We're going to be bringing on Sidecar Coffee this evening.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I could use some right now. I'm a little
Yeah, where's the sidecar?
woohoo! Yeah.
So thank you,
Decaf.
Shanley. We are excited to announce yet another partner in education, new partner. You don't have any other partners currently, right? Or you
Correct.
guys have helped out, though. I
Yeah.
was thinking he recently did something with Irving. So it's nice that you're officially a partner now with Kingsley, and I'd like to introduce Jana Qualls, the principal, to welcome this new partnership.
Thank you. We are so excited. So this is Alex Hoddle, and he is going to be working with us at Kingsley to partner with Sidecar. So I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yay.
Does he want to say some words?
Alex, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, we're really excited too. We strive to be part of our community, and we can't give back as much as we would like to everyone we would like to, but specifically, this is our Ridgeway location. I'm the manager there, and so we played phone tag and finally got together and decided that this is what we really wanted to do, and if we can give a small part back to what the Waterloo Schools does, what Kingsley does, that's just great. And then more personally for me is, I went to Kingsley, and so, I'm a product of Waterloo, stayed around, just bought a house in the Kingsley neighborhood, so it's like, this is really exciting for me. So I'm just glad that we get to do it, and hopefully get some great coffee in the school and some pastries and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
But-
Kindergartners particularly appreciate
Yes,
the
yes,
high octane.
yes.
No, the
Maybe
teachers
more so
appreciate it.
teachers and parents, but we would love just to help you guys in any way possible, and we're excited about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
I was
we're
going to
s-
say, though, Alex, you are a graduate of Kingsley,
Yep.
so this is appropriate. That's
Yeah.
awesome that
Yeah.
remember your mom and dad
Yep.
and sister in there. So super, super. And
Awesome.
we have Sidecar coffee at my work, so I get it every morning. So.
Yeah,
Nice.
this is pretty great.
Yep. I was just there on Saturday.
we
So fabulous. So,
Awesome.
well, thank you very much for and welcome aboard. And Jana, thank you for being here tonight too. And make sure that Tara gets her picture because we got to put this up.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
I feel like we should clap.
Yeah. Woohoo. Okay. So can we accept it? And then if they want to come. Okay.
Yeah, we can
Great.
accept it.
Okay.
We did it yesterday, so I could talk about
Okay.
that one if you'd be all right.
Yeah, that'd be great. The next item on our agenda then is a donation from the Hope City Church. And this is part of our board policy is that for donations that are over $2,500, we do pass or accept those. And so the recommended motion is that the Board of Education accepts and acknowledges with gratitude the donation from Hope City Church in the amount of $4,000 to the Waterloo Schools as outlined.
So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. And a second? Second. Thanks. Thanks, guys. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lindeman. I know she and Tara Thomas were both at Hope City yesterday, and we can talk just a little bit more about this wonderful donation.
Yeah, we had gotten word from Hope City staff, the pastor and staff, that they had done some money raising and they wanted to really contribute and support our school district. And so they had some schools that they had raised. And I'm not exactly sure, so I think one of the questions that you would want to ask is, how did they decide which schools to give to? And I really don't know the answer to that. There were a couple other schools, and so I don't know if it was some of the members of the church. And India, maybe you know, I don't know, but she doesn't know. I'm really not sure. But they had asked us to come and receive that money yesterday. So each of the schools listed here, which is East, West, Central, Lowell, Lou Henry, Irving, Carver, and Pointer, had a representative who attended the service yesterday, as did I. And so we went and we received the money and they gave it to us, and they just talked about they wanted to contribute to the success of the school district and of our students, and they just hoped that we would use the money to support our students. And so it was really heartwarming to have them give the money, and we appreciated it so much. And so we thank them gratefully. They're not here tonight, but we really did do the majority of the receiving yesterday. I know that you all need to approve that donation, but we did go there yesterday to thank them.
Great. I was just going to say, just to make sure that they are thanked gratefully
Yes,
from
they
all
were.
of
It
us.
was
So
very grateful. So.
awesome. Wonderful. Is there anything else then? Any board member have any other comment? All right, well then, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the donation from Hope City Church, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. Thanks again. If we see anybody from the church, we'll be sure to give them a shout out too.
And we'll
So-
make sure the schools I know are all going to send thank yous as
Good.
well. So we will make sure that we were very grateful yesterday, but we'll make sure we formalize that as well.
Excellent. Well, the next item on our agenda is information from individuals and delegations, and judging from our quite empty ranks, no offense, Tara and or Andrew, I'm guessing that there is no one here this evening who wishes to address the board. Alrighty then, so seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda, and this evening it consists of 7 items: the minutes of the November 12th, 2018 regular board meeting, personnel appointments and adjustments, bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, RJ McElroy Trust Excellence in Education grants, the appointment of the 2018-2019 School Improvement Advisory Committee, setting the date of the public hearing for asbestos removal at Longfellow Elementary, and setting the date of public hearings for the sale or disposal of real property. Are there any items that board members wish to have removed from the consent agenda?
Item F and item H, please.
Item F and item H. Okay, anything else? So could I get a motion then to put items C, D, E, G, and I on the table, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. And a second? Thanks, Rhonda. And all those in favor of those 5 items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to item F on page 25.
The superintendent's recommendation is that the Board of Education accept and acknowledge with gratitude the RJ McElroy Trust Excellent in Education grants in the amount of $2508.80 for the 18-19 school year.
Thank you, Sue. And is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jesse. And discussion.
I just wanted to just pull it to really thank
Yes.
McElroy Trust again for these grants. I just looked at these grants, and I have sent an email to one of the teachers just to hear more about it. I mean, talk about exciting in education, educational escape rooms. I mean, how awesome.
Yeah.
And Brain Pop. You know, I mean, these are awesome things for our students. And so I want to thank the teachers for being on top of this and going the extra mile to get these dollars to make these enrichment programs for our students, because we have the best teachers and the best support for our community with the McElroy Trust in this instance, and our churches, Hope City, but specifically the Trust, just giving these grants and letting these extra programs happen.
Thanks, Sue. And we should note that there are 3 different schools. There's one at East High, and there's one at Elk Run, our early childhood center, and then there's a team at Hoover Middle School that have been awarded these grants. So it's great. So, all right. Is there any further discussion? Then all those in favor of approving the RJ McElroy Trust Excellence in Education grants, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us then to item H, which is setting the date of the public hearing for asbestos removal at Longfellow Elementary, and this is on page 28. And that recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the date of January 14th, 2019 at 5 p.m. to hold the public hearing for the Longfellow Elementary asbestos removal project as outlined.
So moved.
Thanks, Jesse. And a second? Second. Thank you, Astor. And discussion.
I just wondered kind of what the time frame is looking for Longfellow, if we could be apprised of that. And just again, as far as our diligence to get rid of these old buildings, I know this one has been there a while. So.
Yes. This was the next one on our list, and certainly anybody who's driven by it knows that it's in pretty bad disrepair. I talked to Marty about this when I saw this on our agenda, Marty Metcalf, our Director of Operations, and as soon as that asbestos removal occurs, which he hopes that can happen here in the cold months, they hope to start raising the building and have it down before the end of the year. So once the weather's warm, certainly it will not be sitting through, like, even I said, well, by the time school starts, and he said by the time school is out. That's the plan. So in May, yeah, or yes, late spring, he said. So.
And go through the entire demo process like we
Yes.
have after the asbestos.
Yep,
but
approval, but this starts
Super.
the process to get the asbestos out, and then once the asbestos is out, then we can start with the,
I drove by the building after a complaint, and indeed, at the west entrance, the door is open.
Yep.
People can go in. And on the east side, there's 5 windows, so hate to spend, money, but I think we need to maybe take some immediate action just to put the plywood back up to prevent.
just some plywood or
just some
something
just to
over
keep it
those.
safe for people not getting
Yeah,
in
the
it.
west entrance,
Yeah.
it has plywood on the door, but the bottom half of the piece of plywood's been broken out.
Yeah.
So you can literally just duck and
Yeah.
walk into the building. And on the east side, it's not quite as accessible, but there are 5 ground level windows that are completely out. So I don't know exactly how soon, a contractor could put a construction fence around there to
Get to work.
get
I mean-
people to work, but I would ask that maybe we get with Marty or somebody, and if it can't be done very quickly, if this process isn't quick enough, and we tell the contractor the minute you get it,
You must.
you surround that building with construction.
Put
very-
that in the offer, the
Yeah,
bid.
In the
Make-
bid. Lyle, we have a facilities meeting
Yeah,
on Wednesday,
we
so
can
let's
talk
be
about
sure to
that,
bring
but-
that up. And I agree. I've also heard from several people about the condition of the building, and I do want to thank the neighborhood. They've been extremely patient, and we know it looks bad and it needs to come down. It's time. So it's more than time. So it's the next thing on our agenda, the first we meet in January. So
Is there a particular order in choosing when a building comes down? I know Longfellow has been on the waiting list for a while, waiting for the building to come down. So, when if a person asks, like, how do we know when we're going to be the next one on the list to get our building taken down? I mean, I don't know if there's an answer for that, but
we do have I don't have the list in front of me, but we do have a list. And Michael, I don't know if you would want to address that. Some of it is based on availability of if perhaps, like the Orange School came down because we were transferring that to the city. And that was part of our agreement with them, is that the building would be raised. Yeah, it's just been on as a pay-as-you-go, as we can afford it.
Well, and in an instance like the old Irving, we kept that up for a while and we used it for city training stuff for the police and fire. So I guess if there's a need that, obviously Longfellow, there is not a use or a need for it. But I
thought Irving
think,
ended up being turned back into houses too, didn't it?
well, then they
Yes.
tore,
Yes.
yeah, when they eventually tore it down. But it was used for like police training and sniffing out drug dogs. And I mean, they used a lot in that building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many
Yeah.
do we have left then?
not many.
I can't tell you. 5?
Devonshire's down.
I'm just curious. Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Not
It's
very
less.
much.
Not many.
It's less than a handful.
Okay.
I think we were at 5 at one point, but I think it's less than that now.
I think everything, most everything's being used at this point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Edison.
Great question.
They waited a long time for that.
Okay. Yeah, Pam, we'll double check that and make sure we get that info to you.
Thank
So,
you.
But
Yep.
I just think it's a good commitment that we made, and to be a good neighbor, and to be, like Lyle said, I think I drove by there too, and it's an eyesore, and those neighbors have put up with it for a long time. So I just
It's
think
time. So,
If you look at the number we've done in the last 3-4 years, I mean, it's a huge number of buildings that have
yeah.
been cleaned up.
Well, the good thing about the abatement, the asbestos abatement too, is that it can happen in the winter. It can happen in cold weather, so that helps too. Some construction can't, but we'll get rid of it, so. All right, anything further? Then all those in favor of approving the public hearing date for the asbestos removal at Longfellow Elementary, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That concludes our consent agenda this evening, so we will move on then to item J, which is on page 30. And these are board policy changes. This is the second reading for these. And the recommended motion is the board approve the following policies: board member oath of office, school board association membership, guiding principles for employees, and Title I parent involvement. Thank you, Sue. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, India.
Welcome.
And Tara Thomas is back up here, so I'll turn it over to you, Tara.
Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Wow. Silence. Hearing none. Right. Rhonda. So hearing none, are there any questions for Tara? All right. Then if not, I would entertain, or, go ahead. Did somebody say something?
Yeah. There were two of these that had significant changes. 602.65. Pretty much the whole previous policy is crossed out. And there's new policy.
Well, and Darren Hannah came to our meeting and explained that they took it verbatim
From the state. Yeah.
Yes, there were some state requirements that needed to be altered, so we preserved some of our original policy and then added in the additional language. There was another policy that also referenced Title I, so we tried to essentially merge them with the updated requirements from the state.
So do we have a process that's been developed that, to support our Title I families regarding appropriate and available services, we, A, provide information about standards and assessments, B, provide training and materials for parents to help their children, 3, educate school personnel about involved parents and the value of parent contributions. So particularly to provide training and materials to parents. Is that a developed process? And is it exclusive for just the Title I parents?
Great question, one that Ed Services could address per Dr. Mohorn, perhaps.
Because all of our schools that are Title now are school-wide Title, we don't target just the parents of students that receive direct Title I services. So
Okay.
they'll do family nights where they do education on helping your child read, but it'll be for everyone that's in the whole building.
And then what does this training and materials consist of? that we provide for parents?
A lot of times it's books, or it will be little cards that have sight words on them or different things like that. They'll give the parents tips on things to help their kids at home. So it may be letters that are cut out. It may be whole words that are done. And usually what it is it's teaching a parent just here's a strategy that you can use with your students to help them to learn how to read, depending on the grade level. The schools differentiate by the grade level because, of course, what's appropriate for kindergarten isn't necessarily appropriate for 5th grade.
So how often do we provide parents with new materials?
That depends on the building. That depends on the building. I know that in the elementary buildings, they have some type of academic parent night, usually about once a month. But again, that's not all buildings. There are some exceptions to that.
I think, am I right that I think the actual Title I law policy requires once a year. I believe that's federal legislation. We would far exceed
Right.
that. I was in buildings too where they do quite a bit on the FAST test, what it is, how to read the results. I was in a building one night and they were actually having the parents take an example, like they practiced it, and then they had the parents, just because then they could feel what it's like to actually take the assessment. And so they do quite a bit on, Dr. Mohan's right that they do a lot on the strategies, but they also do some assessment stuff I was noticing as well.
So then on C, educate school personnel about involving parents and the value of that. This supposedly is every teacher and counselor, right? So do we have a professional development program for that?
Again, what that looks like depends on the building. But I can speak from my experiences when I was at Lincoln, and we did do heavy professional development on involving parents in our buildings. We did the once a month parent nights, at least once a month, sometimes more than that.
And it would be part of the strategic plan. under C
Absolutely,
for-
absolutely.
Okay. So it looks like a good proposal. I just wanted to be sure it's more than words.
Right.
And it also might be a good time to thank the Waterloo School Foundation for their past support of those family nights and literacy nights and math nights, because they have been for a number of years, and we're kind of weaning away from that as they take on different projects. We're not necessarily having them fund the parent nights, so that we sometimes we'll call it Parent University, but they have been longtime supporters of that. There's a certain requirement as far as Title I, like they call it set aside dollars, so you have to take a certain percentage of your funds and set aside for parent involvement. But the school foundation has offset that for a number of years, so it's really a great time to thank them as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Does Title I just extend to elementary? Does it ever go? It goes up to.
We
middle school?
have 2 of our middle schools also receive Title I funds.
Okay, and so do they do, I guess, night programs also, like university, things of that nature? And I ask this question because I know sometimes that transition from elementary to middle school, sometimes parents are just overwhelmed in the sense that they don't get their homework because they don't understand what happened with the transition.
Right.
The support is definitely not the same. And so I always look at our board minutes and we talk about a lot of the support being at the elementary level, but do we ever feel like we can extend it to the upper levels? Because middle school, for example, that's always an interesting level within itself. So
Correct. We do some at both of our Title I buildings, definitely not as much as they do in the elementary,
Okay.
mainly because the funding isn't there
Okay.
as it is in the elementary.
Okay.
So we do some, but of course it's not as much as what happens in the elementary.
So is there a possibility that we can find money or funds to move forward to do support at the middle school level? I mean, I know that it's just a hard transition for a lot of families to get to that
absolutely.
point. So is it possible in the future we could look at funding?
I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think it's critical, particularly at that age, because you're at the age where students don't necessarily want their parents to be involved.
Indeed.
And yet, particularly with explaining the careers and stuff, it's absolutely critical that the parents are involved. So we have to somehow make it fun or attractive or I agree totally that if at all possible, we need to make middle school as important, if not more important than elementary.
What two middle schools are our title?
Central and Carver.
Quick question. I know we have a parent university, so that's more for the secondary, correct? Or is that, can we use some of the resources from our parent university for the middle school? I don't know if that's an option or not.
I don't know what just
Parent University is really what the fundraising efforts were for the school foundation. And so the elementaries could apply for that. So the Parent University funding was just another name for literacy nights and math nights and parent nights. But that was, the funding through the foundation was exclusive to the elementary schools. And so middle schools would have, they absolutely can do that. They don't do as many of them as Steph said, but they would use a different funding stream, not the Parent University. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I would imagine that if we have some parents who, because I think it's, what is it, 4th or 5th grade math level when they start learning algebra. I would imagine, well, for me, you know, if I were one of those parents who wanted to help with homework, I would need some assistance. But I would imagine that our schools, if we have parents who are struggling with literacy in any component, they can contact their building principal.
always absolutely.
Whether they're in the middle school or the high school, and
Absolutely.
get whatever assistance they need. So whereas we may not have named it yet for the middle schools or high schools, I know that we do have those resources. I just wanna
Absolutely.
put that out there.
And Ron, you make a good point because I found it interesting even after being a mathematical career basically, and my kids ask for help. I'm like, okay, I got to think about the techniques you're using because it doesn't match what I grew up on. So okay, I got to go back and kind of look at the book and see how this is how they're doing it. It doesn't match me, but same thing. You have to learn the newer techniques because you could basically unravel what you're being taught in school by trying to do it this way instead. So it's kind of interesting watching that as I was working with one of my kids the other night. Like, do it this way. Okay.
Just tell them you can't show the work. You can get the answer.
You know what? They got the right answer. They must know what they're doing here. So.
Even though you have an engineering degree, you're going to have to learn 4th and 5th grade math all over again.
Exactly.
I hear you. So we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
All right, anything further then on those board policy changes? All right, then seeing none, all those in favor of approving those 4 policy changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to item K, which is our district financial audit. And the recommended motion for this is that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the District Finance Committee to receive and place on file the 2017-18 District Financial Audit.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, India. I'll turn it over to Michael Coughlin. Sue and I were able to, right before, let's see, was that just a week ago, Monday, we met with Bergen KDV and their representative, and were presented with the audit. And so, what is this, Michael, our 20th year of having an unqualified opinion from our auditor, is that correct? I believe? Maybe
Is
not.
that what I had in the exhibit, or did I say 21st?
Oh, maybe it is 21st. If I'd read my exhibit better, let's see.
I don't have that in front of me.
For 20 consecutive years.
Okay.
So, that's good stuff.
I don't know why I don't have connection to the screen.
Well, and I guess we can premise that with
Yeah.
this was our first year using Bergen KDV. We voted to switch auditors, which we decided, Lyle Shenley and I on that subcommittee, that maybe getting a fresh set of eyes, nothing that we had against Hogan Hansen or nothing whatsoever, but we just thought it would be good to have a new set of eyes on our books. And this firm has not done a lot of Iowa finance, so
Do a
I
lot in
think
Minnesota.
yeah, they're very strong in Minnesota, but Iowa they're trying to integrate into Iowa, so they bid on ours. They do a lot of schools like ours, mirroring ours, and so I think for the first year with the switchover and their first year of doing a larger district in Iowa, I think it was a learning curve for both sides a little bit. Our staff was required to do some different documentation than they have in the past, which is a good thing because when you always expect something, then you expect it and you're ready for it. But if you don't always expect it, then you have to provide it. And I think that worked well with our staff, and both sides seem to be very positive on the timeliness of getting stuff done. And we typically don't have an audit ready to go at this time. I mean, it's been this is real early. So I was very impressed with Bergen and Nancy particularly, and our finance department. Just excellent job that Deb and Jeff and Michael do. So have I filled enough time, Mike?
Yeah, and I would second that by also saying that, as we have in the past, we also were allowed as board members to just have our own time with the audit and the auditor. And I thought that was, I always appreciate the fact that that is truly transparent and that we are able to ask them any question. And again, they didn't have any concerns or issues. And I thought that was, it just was very telling from both our staff side and from their side. So it was an unequivocally positive experience, so.
Well, apparently something isn't hooked up over there, so I had tested everything on the screen, but didn't test the big screen, so. But you all
We all
have
have documents.
a handout of the PowerPoint. And I'm just gonna touch on some things on that, because this is the presentation that Bergen gave to the Finance Committee. And when we got done, Shanley and Sue both said it would be good to just share some of these points to just kind of review what was in the audit. So I gave you 3 books, and I sent these out all electronically to you. So if you don't want to lug all of this paper home, you can just leave it here and we'll keep it on file. As you know, we are required by state law to annually have the books audited, a financial audit by an independent auditor. Years and years ago, the state auditor did all of them, and it was an enormous job. But that ended before I even started, so that's 30 to 40 years ago that the state auditor was doing all of them. So it is done by independent auditors in the state, and as Sue said, we are branching out and have contracted with Bergen. They have a main office in Bloomington and a main office in St. Cloud, so that's where our people came from. Sue talked about how they prepared or presented before the Finance Committee, and I just wanted to tell you what these books are. The first small one says single audit right above the date. That is the one that contains our comments. Most of this book is a requirement that they have to deal with 2 federal programs that are of higher dollar value, and they did the program at Cunningham for the PLA school, and also for special education. So that's the documentation they have to put together for that. But in the back of this, on page 10, is the comments that they write. They have to go through several different categories and just report on them if there's any instances of interest or discrepancy of what the numbers should have been. And if you look on page 10, the ones that we got comments on were the certified enrollment, and out of roughly 11,000 students, we were 1.72 students off. So this is one of those comments that regardless how minor it is, they have to report it. So unless we get absolutely perfect count, we'll get something here. So it's not really a detraction from our work. It's just saying they identified that did happen. On page 11, yeah,
Were these students in Iowa? In other words, has the state developed a system to cross-check to make sure they know where every student is and what district they're playing? Or are these students that moved out of state and didn't tell us?
Yes and yes. There is a process when the state, oh gosh, Steph, help me. How many years ago did they switch to a state ID? There's a 10-digit ID that every student gets when they move in. And when that started, I want to say that was 6-7 years ago, something like that. They were able to better track students, because prior to that time, we always heard the phrase phantom students. And so you would count who you thought you had, but somebody else might count them as well. So they do, so to answer your question, yes, they do cross-reference that. In some cases, it takes a little while, and so we may get flagged like we do here, but it's much closer. I think 6-7 years ago, there might have been, you could have double counted 50 kids, 20 kids, 10 kids, you don't know, so. We don't. There's a process of, they call it validating, and so they do try to flag kids. And so when we first certify, we may end up with 110 flags, meaning that somebody else claimed a kid, and so then it just takes several weeks for us to hammer that out. But there still are situations where, maybe a student's state ID, I don't know. I mean, I can't really give you a scenario of where this one kid, or, sometimes it's 0.3 kids or something like that. I can't give you a scenario of how that happens, but yes, there is a really tedious validation process, and it usually takes us about 2 weeks to get through it.
if I remember right, Lyle, this involved students that were taking extra classes and where they got counted and when. I mean, this 1.72 is not one student.
No.
Or two or three, it's several that, excuse me, that fall under different categories of, you know, and you think of the state system of a student having a number, for the state to then coordinate all of that from all of the districts in a matter of a couple of weeks to get that all settled before this account is certified. That's really difficult for the state to do. So then when they find something a little later, a minor change they have to correct, that's what shows up here.
It's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably like a shared time student who's part-time in private school and part-time with us, or a homeschool child who we get 0.1 funding for. And again, it's multiple kids probably, but, or I'm trying to think, or it could be, a preschool child, who's in, repeating preschool and doing a transitional program. It could be really any of those. I'm trying to think of those other partial weightings that count in there, but.
Electronics can work very fast, so we really ought to be pushing the state to have their allocation for every student number
Right.
prior to claiming.
Right. Which, if the child has always been in Iowa, that probably works pretty well. But when a child moves in from Illinois on the day of count and they're a homeschooled child at a 0.1, I think there are scenarios where that happens. So it does just take a while to catch up to find out exactly what. And they actually run it automated now based on the date of attendance. So us telling, like, let's say that Rhonda moves into our district, us telling the state that Rhonda moved in would not count her. It goes by their attendance into the student information system. So once she's been in school and she's attending in school, her attendance gets sent to the state, and that's how you get paid, or that's how it tracks. So it actually goes by child's attendance, not the district saying that Rhonda is a student here. I'm going to use you because you're right by me. So it actually tracks it on a system of attendance. So if you know a child is coming to you, let's say somebody moves over the weekend, if count day's on Monday and a child moves over the weekend, if the child doesn't come to school on Monday, they do not get counted. They have to be present on count day. They come the next morning, even though they have come on Friday and turned in the paperwork. That's the way the system works.
And wouldn't it make a difference if that so said student was an ELL student? Because the funding would be different.
That's another,
otherwise.
yep, absolutely. ELL or special ed, there's different weightings, so it could be any of those. Maybe a child changed weighting on a particular date and it didn't go through, and it, you know, there's all kinds of, I mean, honestly, it's pretty good for, this is really minor from, but yeah.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Auditor, she was very impressed.
Yeah.
That out of 11,000 kids,
Yeah,
that was all we
it's-
were off.
yeah.
She
On the aid and levy worksheet in the following year, we will have to take off this 1.72 student. So it does relate directly to funding, as enrollment always does. So that's why we tried to get it as close as possible, but it is a very complicated system. I sat through a presentation of that at one of my state meetings, probably for the first time in all of these years, and there's 15 to 18 different categories that these students can fall under to be able to be identified. So when you look at an enrollment report, there's a dozen to 15 different lines that make up that number. It's not just count the kids. Okay, then another comment that we had on page 11 was the SAVE fund, and it's not a comment, it's just a public review of what monies went through that. And one of the biggest issues with that is the revenue bond that we did last year, so that upped the revenue, leaving the ending balance higher than the year before. There was also a comment on the bottom of 11 talking about student activity fund and some minor issues about public purpose. To the tune of somebody had their uniforms with their name on the back, so that was a violation. So there are some things that we can do with that. So we're going to work with, this is a new set of auditors that are looking at it a little different way than we did before, so we will address those issues. And then page 12 was a comment about a transfer that we do for the athletic fund for the high schools, and we've been doing that for 12 years now. And we have talked with the auditors every year about this whole issue. Hogan and Hansen treated it a little bit different as far as the technical journal entries. So Bergen is just bringing it to our attention that it's a practice that's a little unusual, but they're very aware of what the district is trying to accomplish by funding the athletic programs in both high schools under a very equitable level. So
Well,
those
and
were the
they did-
comments that we got.
Yeah, they also mention on that as a board that we should publicly state the public purpose of, so we need to do that as a board also.
Yeah, we'll do that when we're ready to make the entries again. Okay. The communication letter is just a review of the process that we went back and forth as far as providing information, and some charts on trends, and they are the charts that I'm going to look at in the PowerPoint. And there's emerging issues from GASB that are coming up to do even more fun things with numbers. And one of the big issues they are hitting on is leases, leasing equipment and how that is recorded. Honestly, we don't have much for leases, so I don't think that's going to affect us. A lot of districts lease all their copiers and lease all their computers and all of these things, and we don't. We own all of those except for a couple of small pieces. The audit itself, there is probably, from the standpoint of you looking through that, the beginning is a narrative of kind of the history and the financial condition of the district and some of the things we've done in the last 5 to 10 years. and what we're looking at as challenges going forward. And then the basic financial reports are in the midsection. And then at the end, I'd also like to draw your attention to the information that just kind of summarizes a lot of different aspects of the district. There's one section that talks about the bond debt, that's all outstanding and when it's due, and how much bond debt limit we have left. That's on 55 and 56. The student activity balances by building are on page 81. And starting on 87 is just a 10-year history of many different aspects of the district. Outstanding debt during that, the tax rates, city demographics, who our major employers are, history of the employee FTEs, and even if you want to find out what the mileage is to LA, it's in there. LA and Denver, and these are some of the things that the committee that reviews this for our annual award issue is they want to know not just the numbers we have, but who are we? Where are we? Who are our employers? What makes up our district? It just gives them a little bit broader picture of understanding the financial issues of the district. So I did want to just hit a few of these slides in the PowerPoint presentation that I gave you. That is Bergen's PowerPoint presentation. And if you look up in the top right corner, it's a little confusing. The first one says /2. It looks like 12, but it's really 2. So just as we go through these, I will refer to those. So on page 2, they gave us an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that an auditor can give, and that the financial statements were presented fairly in all material respects, and you can read that, showing the activity and then the ending remaining fund information, basically our different balances. On page 3, there was no internal control findings of how we do things. The single audit performed on the school improvement grant, the SIG grant that's currently at Cunningham, and the school nutrition. I think I said special ed before, but it's school nutrition. So since we get so many federal dollars from that, they have to test a couple of different ones every year. And then the communication letter, I outlined, the communication book, I outlined that. One of the things on page 4 that was kind of a subject of interest is when you go through the audit report, they group things together. So the general fund, the management fund, the debt service fund are together as governmental funds. And then they have some that are called proprietary funds, where they're supposed to kind of make their own money. Food service and the print shop. So those are kind of separated out. And then there's fiduciary funds, and those are monies that we're holding for someone else. Really the issue we have is scholarships. We don't have anything major with that, but there are issues where I've been involved in. We are, and I think it's that way for like River Hills, that the AEA operates it, and Cedar Falls holds that money as a fiduciary fund, that it's coming from all the districts. We pay for it out of the general fund, but they can kind of keep track of it in its own special place. It's not really the district's money, but it's being operated separately in the district's name.
When they use the term single audit, does that mean it's the first?
No, it just means that they're drawing that out of the big numbers. And they're saying instead of being part of, you know, they come in and do a random sample of invoices, contracts, whatever they're asking for. But in this one in particular, a single audit, they will zero in and do all of their testing in one area. It doesn't mean they will pull every invoice, but they will prove out the beginning balance to the ending balance of that particular program.
Okay.
A couple of the things that Bergen was bringing out, and I will say that in summary, everything in the general fund improved, and I've been telling you that all year. So they were putting together just some charts and trends of why that happened. And some of the most influential components that make up the financial picture to make it improve or not. One of the things on page 5 is the budget year and the growth rate, which you can put SSA above that. That's what the state gave us. But at the same time, and the corresponding cost per pupil, but actually the new money based on enrollment is really more of the picture. So if you look back at 2014, because of increased enrollment, the state gave us 2%, we really got 2.81. And 4% the next year was really 5.82 because enrollment went up. But then when you look at enrollment dropping, that 2.25% became 1% because we didn't have enough enrollment to not lose money from the year before. So it does give you an idea of the revenues. You're starting to see already Davenport, Des Moines articles of we're going to start cutting. And they don't even know what the state's going to give us yet. And I'll hold my comments on that practice, but
Hey, Michael, I just thought potentially a suggestion for Bergen, what they put school foundation aid, and that kind of is confusing to me because school foundation,
oh,
I'm thinking of the Waterloo Schools Foundation. So,
yeah, that's
right.
state supplementary.
State supplemental. I mean, just because that could be confusing with the foundation and the Waterloo Schools
Yeah.
Foundation.
So page 6 does show by chart the enrollment changes through the last 5 years, which then generates the revenue for the last 5 years, and that's gone from 122 million up to 131 million at the end of 2018, and then below you can see how it's broken down.
Is this correct though, Michael?
What's that?
From 17 to 18? So 18 would be our current?
No, 17, 18 is what
17, 18,
this audit is
Right.
referring to. So 18 is the end of, is the,
18, 19.
yep. So June
But we were-
2018,
18 budget year, but 17, 18
Right,
school year.
okay, that's just confusing, got it, okay. Budget,
We don't
okay.
have 19.
Right,
Yeah.
so that basically is kind of the right.
okay? So you can see that the revenues have increased a little bit each year. You can see how it's broken down. One thing that kind of sticks out is the state sources from 2014 to 15, going up about 7 million. And that's when TSS and TLC was coming into play. So there was more funding coming from the state. And even the issue of the tax relief, where they were paying for the new money.
You know, it also shows the local sources is flat, if not trending down just
Yeah.
slightly.
And there's a chart here in just a couple pages
Yeah,
on
coming
that.
up, just wait.
Page 8 is a summary of the last 5 years of the expenses. So we were gaining fund balance, unspent balance in the years that our expenditures were remaining pretty flat, and then we did spike a little bit last year because we've been addressing that as far as one in particular was the technology being moved to general fund rather than PEPAL, but the rest of it is just kind of broken across all of the areas that we've increased spending. Page 9 is just a pie chart of that, of the different areas. Regular instruction, so when you think of instruction and add the first few categories together, is about 64%, I believe it was, and then really the student and the other instruction can be added to that. So it was around 70% that we're spending on direct instruction.
On page 9, do we know what the state average is for the pie chart?
State average for what?
The pie chart.
No. I can find that.
I think it'd be interesting to compare where we're at. I'm guessing our special instruction is high compared to our regular instruction. Anyway, it would be interesting to know.
Okay, I'll make something up for you on that. Page 10 talks about the fund balance, not the unspent balance, but the fund balance of basically cash in bank. So that has improved from 6 million to 21 million over those 5 years. And then there's also the fund balance, again, not the unspent balance, but they're very close. The fund balance is made up of several components that there's restrictions. So what I've got highlighted there is basically saying that part of that money in 18, the 21,610,000 has to be spent on certain areas. And then the 19,273 is uncommitted, that we can spend wherever necessary. We did have a question at the audit presentation about the 4-year-old preschool, and more to that answer is some of the other funding is getting less, because preschool is funded by Head Start, voluntary pre-K, Shared Vision, and another small grant, and some of those are getting stagnant or getting less, so that means more of voluntary pre-K was used to fund the same components. This on page 12 is the tax rates. So the dollar askings going from 44 million to 40 million or 41 million. And last year when we did it for 18-19, that dropped below 40 million. So it's 39,670, something like that. So it has seen a decrease. A lot of that is because of the tax abatement changes by the state. So our rate has gone from 1620 down to 1498, and again this year's is 1457. Page 13 is a comparison of the last 3 years of tax rates within our district, depending on where you live. So if you live in Waterloo proper, the total tax rate for this current year, they've actually got this 1 year ahead of the audit, is 39.80. And if you live at a Cedar Falls address, but within the Waterloo district, because you're paying a less city tax, you're paying $33.57. So really the only difference of all of these numbers is the city tax, right in the middle. So you can see Elk Run, Evansdale, Gilbertville, and Raymond. Everybody pays a different tax rate because of what their city tax is, along with the county, community college, the state, the assessor, ag extension, and then our tax rate, which is the same for everybody. So you can see that as you look from one year to the next, and any of you that looked at this chart in the document, the middle set of numbers was wrong because the city tax for Waterloo was not correct. So this is the correct numbers. So you can look at over the last 3 years what all the different cities levied in tax compared to all of the other components, and then the school tax with it. So it depends on what your address is in the Waterloo district. The school nutrition fund, this one is a little bit more difficult to understand how they present it, but they have to present it like there's no federal or state money coming in. So the top number is the money that we get from students and staff to pay for their lunches. And then all of the expenses are compared to that. So that's why you see the big negative numbers. Well, then right below that, it shows the state and federal reimbursements that are coming in to cover that. So we stay very close to just breaking even on that. And this year it had some last minute adjustments on a GASB change of the pension fund, and they didn't do that till after we'd closed our books. So by the time we got all of that recorded, we were $2,500 in the hole. But that isn't cash, that's just value because of liability. And the last page is, on page 15, is a comparison of what we budgeted for the certified budget and what the actual was. And we did kind of the middle set of numbers. We did bump up the certified budget for that because we had the funds to do it, even though we knew we weren't going to spend it, but we didn't want to go over with our expenses. So they are a little hefty, and the other expenditures, the 10 million difference, is because of WCC project. Really didn't know at the time we did the amendment how far they were going to get by June 30th with billing. So that was put a cushion in that as well. So that just explains in documentation that we didn't overspend our published budget. But overall, they were very complimentary. Things are going very well with that, but it just sets the stage for the next challenge that's coming along. So this just gives us that documentation of where we're at and confirms it as we look at the revised budget for this school year, and then that will be used to go into the 1920 budget year, which is hard to say that we're already talking about the 2020 school year. And we will start on that as far as some projections with that at the next finance committee.
So although you don't want to speak upon what other districts are doing or your opinions about that, as far as Waterloo, you feel comfortable where we're going? Just
I
for
feel
viewers.
very comfortable.
Good, thank you.
And just a question on that, like for the school nutrition fund and with our additional schools providing the free lunch and breakfast, will this look a lot different than next year?
We are just starting to do some comparisons with that. Getting a couple of months under our belt, and the reimbursements come in a month later. So we really only have 2 or 3 months to really look at so far. So that's kind of setting the stage to do some comparing.
I like the idea of seeing your comparison that you mentioned about how the rest of the state spends their instructional. So they also talked about, Bergen also talked about, for us, that they will be able to layer these charts as we go forward with them and really see some trends in that. And she said that pie chart is, you can really pick them up when you see them displayed that way. So, all right, is there anything further for Michael?
Just good job to your staff. And
Yeah.
awesome.
Tell them thanks.
Excellent work.
All right, then, all those in favor of approving or accepting, the 2017-2018 district financial audit, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That concludes the action items on our agenda this evening, and so I will turn it over to Dr. Lindeman for her superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. My first item is really a statement of gratitude. We have finished our coat distribution for the year, and we really have several entities that work, but the main two are Operation Warm, which is really comes out of the Waterloo Downtown Rotary, and it's really spearheaded by Steve and Liz Thorpe. And they've been here before, but they just give of their time and just work to give the coats, making sure all of our kids are warm for the winter. And the other group that has worked really hard was, it's really just a couple. It's Bruce and Julie Ehlers, and they are amazing. And I think between the two of them, I don't know, Tara, do you have a count of coats? I know that Ehlers did almost 1,000 this year, and I think the Rotary was 1,000 as well, if not more. So it really was just an amazing effort, and I wish I had the number for the Rotary in front of me, but it might even be more than that. So it's just an amazing support for our community. We know that, we've heard the phrase so many times, it takes a village, and it just really is a great example of that. So and not only coats, but boots and hats and gloves, and some of the local realtors did some things, and so just such a heartwarming gift, I guess, coming to our students. So thank you for that. The second one is just a reminder of the Battle of Waterloo this weekend on Friday and Saturday, and I won't say too much because I have a feeling, I thought maybe
No,
Jesse.
actually,
Okay, good.
actually I'm not.
Okay,
you can
good.
take it.
Okay,
Take
so
it.
I just, on Friday and Saturday, there's just some really amazing wrestling, and if you go back and look at the history of Waterloo wrestling, it really has a deep history and heritage for wrestling here. And so thank you to all of the people that are involved in that. It's pretty amazing. And then my last thing is this week we kicked off the Youth Council, the Waterloo Youth Council, and although that is not a Waterloo Schools sponsored event, it really comes out of the city of Waterloo. Our district is certainly supporting that, and I had the opportunity on, must have been Friday, to go and meet the students, and there are 28 of the most amazing leaders who were learning about city government, and had quite a variety of speakers, but they will be introduced at multiple times throughout the next spring. So I think their formal kickoff is at the Waterloo City Council. They will be announced and installed. They'll do an installation in January. Pam, is that January 7th? January 7th, and so watch the paper for that. They're also going to be announced at the Martin Luther King banquet, and all of those students will be going there, and so and then multiple other times in the spring. So kudos to all of the people who are working so hard to give those kids some really authentic leadership experiences.
That's awesome. They should come to a school board meeting.
They will.
I'd love that.
They will be here.
All right, perfect. So, all right, I'm going to start down here to my left with India.
Sure. I just wanted to give shouts out to staff, custodian, teachers, band teachers. Right now we're in the thick of holiday and programming, and they are doing big things at these schools. I want to also give a shout out to the communication school and community relations department, because I do look at Lynn Armstrong email about what's going on in the community, and I just want to sometimes just want to pop my head into some of these programs that they're doing, because they're doing some amazing things in these schools. You know, they have them at every level as far as financial pocketbooks. You can go into these schools free and support these kids and doing some amazing things. So I just want to give out shouts out to those individuals who are giving their extra time, extra money, doing these things for these kids in this community. It's really big. So that's it.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jesse?
Yes, I didn't have a battle comment, but I will have a wrestling comment. So, no, it was great. It was about 2 Thursdays ago. We had a Bob Siddons Memorial at West High for late West High wrestling with Bob Siddons, who passed away. We had a social outing for any former West wrestlers, particularly Bob Siddons. We actually had 2 people there from the class of 1951, I think. So it was a good eating there. It was a lot of former West people, even former wrestlers. Mike Allen's there, Denver people there to come watch the meet. And anybody who missed the meet or went home early missed the dandy, because in the spirit of Bob Siddons, as he was been there, I would said that the team was down 39-6 at one point and come back and scored enough pins, scored 5 straight pins.
Wow.
To win 42-39. So I think if Coach Siddons was looking down, he would have been real happy with how the kids responded on a big night. And I thought they really captured his the essence of him that night, and for another generation of kids to come along. So just a big evening. I just, like I said, thanks to all the people involved pulling that event off. We had shirts for Coach Siddons for sale, and Dr. Pappas, Mr. Huff, all the people that worked really hard to make sure that the eating was really representative, and said a lot to Coach Siddons.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to Lowell, the staff at Lowell. I was at Lowell last week, and boy, those hallways were shiny. There was not anything on the ground. That custodian staff there is just amazing in this kind of weather. I just was like, wow. And I went into probably 8 different classrooms, and honestly, I did not see one student that was off in the corner unengaged. So I was very impressed with the staff and just what they're doing, and just the diversity in the school. It was just awesome to see it. So, and a lot of young teachers. So that was fun to see lots of young teachers. So keep up the good work. All of our buildings are, I just think we have an amazing staff here in Waterloo.
I just have hopefully 2 brief comments. Seems like so long ago, but I had an opportunity to attend the ISAB convention, and particularly the UEN banquet. This is my 2nd year doing so, and this year was a little bit different. Instead of a keynote speaker at the banquet, we did some interactive conversations that were amazing. Just hearing the different things from other districts, it was very informational for me, but beneficial as well. Just seeing a different, instead of just listening to a keynote speaker, you actually got to engage with other districts. So it was awesome. And then around the same time, middle of November, there was an article that could be found in the USA Today that ranked Waterloo Cedar Falls as one of the worst places in America, well, the #1 worst place in America for African Americans to live. And as a community and as a school district, which means a lot to the community, it was very disturbing for me, and I'm pretty sure you guys as well. And I haven't commented on this or said anything on this, but as a school district, our goal is, and I will read the mission statement, is we're committed to a comprehensive system of education and support to ensure that every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community. And if we really think about the mission statement, it doesn't just mean the school as it is now. Those students will become adults, and a lot of our students remain in this community. So, I mean, I have two questions, and not specific to this board or the school, but for the community as well. And what are we doing as a school district and as a community to make sure that we change the narrative of going forward and making a difference? And then, are we doing enough? So what are we doing, and are we doing enough? So, thank you.
On sort of a related note, I don't know if you saw there was an article in the Register on Sunday about big tech coming to rural Iowa and elsewhere, rural areas, basically because they can't recruit enough students in the traditional areas. This particular article was focused on Jefferson, Iowa, because one of the people, there were 4 people kind of in this consortium that's really pushing this, was from there. But another person I noticed was from Independence, Iowa. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There might be opportunity there. So, you know, opportunity probably hasn't ever been better if we provide what you're saying. Are we doing enough? If we do enough, I mean, the drumbeat recognizing the critical need for these skills, these students to have career skills, is just continues to increase at a higher rate and volume. So I think we're kind of in the right place at the right time, but I agree, we can't lose this opportunity, because the opportunity is there, it would appear. We just need to make sure we take advantage of it, which is going to help everybody.
Well, since I didn't say anything, I'm going to now proselytize, since we've been talking about some deep stuff. That's okay. But no, I'm really proud of the mayor and the city's initiative of working with the youth, because when you asked her about changing the narrative, I mean, what better group of people to help change that narrative than our future leaders? And so I'm really excited about that youth council, and I'm glad that a majority of them represent our school district. And I think those young people, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how they will be able to come up with solutions to those answers. I mean, answers to those questions. And so, yeah.
Those questions are good ones, though, that need to stay in the forefront. So, I don't know, Lyle, we interrupted you. I hijacked you. Were you done? Okay.
I waited for a breath.
Okay, there's a breath. Is it a pause, or is he really done? Okay, we're good. All right. And I have nothing further this evening other than to remind our viewers that this is our only meeting in December. We will be back here on January 14th, and I would like to wish everyone a happy and safe holiday season. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Good evening.
What did I guess? Are you traveling, Jesse?
No,
Good for you.
we have not traveled since the kids were really little, because it's just,
Yeah, it looked like they just got dumped on in your neighborhood down south.
yeah, they can have it. I was, if wrestling season, it takes a big hit, because
Yeah.
the kids are,
Yeah, that's where we are. That's true. When your kids are
if
involved.
I want to travel south, I'll wait till it really warms up.
Yeah. So
It's
you
not
can-
really that enjoyable down there